Thanks for clicking. The Canadian Real Estate Association, the CREA, has released Canada's real estate data for the month of August, showing a market continuing to remain flat. And, given the flat activity, the CREA stepped up its game to offer some expert analysis.
What do August home sales in pancakes have in common?
No, but seriously, esteemed CREA economist Sean Cathcart has once again given us access to his crystal ball.
Declining interest rates are about to press the play button again on this market anytime now.
Gonna be amazing!
And for once in a long time, Cathcart could actually be right. At least it's possible this time, with the Bank of Canada saying it could move faster and deeper on rate cuts as the economy slows, and the government introducing new measures to help stimulate demand in the real estate market come 2025, we are witnessing some real, tangible, palpable signs that demand could be returning to the market next year.
We've got all this, evidence.
With that said, these interest rate cuts and stimulative measures coming from the government come amid a weakening economy, with former Governor of the Bank of Canada, Stephen Pallaz, saying that Canada could be on the verge of a recession, which leads to the obvious question, how well does Canada's real estate market usually perform under a recession? So what I want to do today is go over Canada's real estate data for the month of August, take a look at the predictions being offered by the CREA, and then discuss some historical data on how well Canada's housing market usually performs when the economy is contracting. As we'll see today, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding Canada's housing market heading into 2025, but we will obviously continue to track that market on this channel. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, let's get into this data. Onto the data. First up, the benchmark price. The benchmark price, if you'll remember, that's the price of a home that represents the most popular set of features. And the benchmark was down, though minorly, in August. The benchmark in July was sitting at $717,500, and that dropped $100 to $717,400 in August. However, take that current data with a grain of salt, as the benchmark price last month was reported higher and then revised down later.
They'll never notice.
With that said, the average price was down a bit more substantially, falling about $17,000 in August and up about $1,000 since this point in time last year. With that said, what about sales? Were the 50 basis points worth of rate cuts and the highly anticipated 25 basis points that came in September enough to bring buyers back to the market? Well, according to the CREA, we saw a 1.3% month-over-month increase in August. Further, we're also seeing an increase year over year, which is what you really actually want to measure, comparing Augusts to Augusts. Now, the CREA doesn't give us last year's data, only providing us with quarterly annualized data for whatever reason. But I had August 2023's data saved from when we did the September update last year.
You got fat.
Fair enough. Using last year's Excel doc, we can see in August of 2023, Canada had 460,000 quarterly annualized sales compared to 468,000 last month. So, yeah, we did see a marginal increase in the number of sales year over year in August, up about 1.8%. We're not seeing the entry of 72% of Canadians as misreported and mispredicted by the Financial Post, but we are seeing a small uptick in the aggregate number of sales.
It begins.
So, the benchmark price is down about $100, the average price is down about $17,000, and we are seeing a bit more sales come to the market than we would usually expect. Or, as Sean Cathcart puts it, we're still in a holding pattern.
Bigger picture is a market that's still stuck in the same holding pattern it's been in since the beginning of the year.
So, according to Cathcart, everything is still on hold, everything is still on pause as it's been since the beginning of the year, which will obviously come as a surprise to fans of Sean Cathcart, as if you'll remember back in March he had to break out the calculus to tell us how things were changing.
Looking for clues about what you and I are going to be talking about over the next few months. This is a really big one.
And then, of course, we had hints of an active market in April.
Under the surface, we are seeing some action. It's what you might call a shoulder month. One of these.
I could keep going, but you get the idea.
Is it the much expected and anticipated first cuts that are going to bring people back in?
Get him on the phone.
With that said, Cathcart says, this time it's a lock. It's guaranteed. The housing market is going to heat back up again.
Overall forecast for a return of a more vibrant housing market in the next year, call it a lock, call it a sure thing, call it a slam dunk, however you want to say it, it's going to happen.
But this time at least, Cathcart isn't entirely wrong. If the economy continues to weaken, then it's likely we will see even more rate cuts coming from the Bank of Canada, with even Governor Tiff Macklem noting this week that bigger rate cuts are possible as the bank continues to worry about the labor market. Yet, as we saw in the CREA's assessment, with all of these rate cuts coming down the pike, there is not a single mention of the economic backdrop, seemingly arguing that these rate cuts will be falling from the sky.
What?
Yet, as former Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Pallaz points out, there is a very real possibility that a recession could be on the horizon, that these rate cuts are not occurring in the vacuum, with Pallaz noting that the unemployment rate is already 2% higher than its low point, which is usually a decisive recession signal in many cases. And it's not just Pallaz that's noting this. While the usual suspects, brokers, and realtors are pumping the statements made by Benjamin Tal, they are forgetting that Tal said that the bank will be cutting in order to stave off a recession.
I didn't read it yet because...
Which obviously begs the question, or should, if the bank is offering these jumbo cuts in the midst of a recession, then how does the Canadian housing market usually fare in a recession? Well, of the data that we have available from the CREA, there were 2 recessions on record from Canada where the bank dropped rates to near zero, 2008 and 2020. In 2020, house prices did this, but in 2008, house prices did this, though did rebound eventually. The previous recession to those two occurred in the 1990s, and prices plunged 32% across Ontario for 7 years. And in the recession before that, which occurred between 1981 and 1982, during which, according to a report from the CCPA, house prices fell during and after that recession as well. So, 4 recessions, the early 1980s, the early 1990s, 2008, and 2020, house prices fell in 3 out of the 4, despite interest rate cuts precipitating all 4 recessions.
Supplies are low.
Yeah, that is going to be a standard refrain, that because supply is so low, because supply is so tight, that even the unemployed are going to need to purchase a home at $1.5 million.
I can help.
But yeah, supply probably is low, though as we've talked about so many times before on this channel, it's very, very difficult to get data to support that assertion, to measure the extent to which supply is low in Canada. You can get stuff from the Fraser Institute showing that population growth has outpaced housing completions for the past few years, but that same study, and most of them like it, have very few mentions of the word death. So they really don't tell us anything. What we really need is snapshots in time, showing us how many housing units are available relative to the population. In the study from the Fraser Institute misquotes at least one other study from Scotiabank that actually tried to do this, though they did it wrong, noting that Canada has the lowest housing supply in the G7. This claim was first started by Scotiabank back in 2021 and picked up and relentlessly propagated by Canada's esteemed media. The fact that this was not the case was pointed out by BMO's Doug Porter in 2022, noting that the US has less homes per 1,000 people than we do and is indeed part of the G7.
Really?
The average price of a home in the United States is $500,000, and Canada's is sitting at $650,000, though obviously exchange rates are going to blur that somewhat. Yet the notion that Canada has the lowest supply of homes in the G7 was continually propagated by the media as late as September of 2023 by the Globe and Mail, parroting the non-fact posted by Scotiabank. So the Globe and Mail didn't care to or didn't want to cross-check the facts being posed by Scotiabank, who also didn't care to or didn't want to cross-check its facts with the OECD.
Everybody's doing it.
Now, this isn't to say that Canada doesn't have a supply problem, it probably does, but these really are the guys that you would expect to know these things. You would expect the media to be able to uncover these facts, or at minimum the banks. And if the banks in the major papers don't have the data to support the supply argument, data that would give us a snapshot in time so we would know how many housing units are available per 1,000 Canadians, to give us the ability to put housing supply into context, if they don't have that data, then I can guarantee you your local realtor does not either. And if they did have it, they would use it. As such, it's very difficult to judge whether or not a supply problem will be enough to prop up prices even as Canada enters into a recession. So, is a resurgent housing market a lock for 2025? History would suggest maybe not, Though there is quite a bit of demand out there, demand that is only being fueled by the government's new rules coming down the pike on December 15th. But how much that will translate into increased demand, especially under a weakening economy, remains to be seen. With that said, as we've seen today, it's definitely an unclear situation. No one knows where the economy is heading, whether or not we'll be in a recession in a year's time. Absolutely zero people can tell you. As such, as always, don't try to time the market. If you see a house and you like that house and it's in the budget, consider buying it. If it's not in the budget and you don't like the house, then don't buy it. We will obviously continue to track Canada's real estate market on this channel. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates. But for now, thanks so much for watching.